I guess you had one. That's what I was told. Something about down at the beach.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I call this meeting to order of the Board of Supervisors in beautiful King William County. And before I start the roll, we have a request from Travis Miskowski to join in the meeting telephonically, which means we must vote on this.
Make a motion that we accept Travis's call in.
So,
Are you asking or stating? Were you asking for a second or you were stating it?
I was stating.
Okay, all right.
Any discussion? Olivia?
Mr. Greenwood,
Aye.
Mr. Hanson,
Aye.
Mr. Earhart,
Aye.
Mr. Hodges.
Aye. You will, before we start, a moment of silence, if you would give him one moment. And for those that don't know, he seriously injured his knee, tearing the ligaments, which caused him to have surgery, and will probably be out for a while. He's not even able to go to his regular job.
Good evening. Oh, that's fine. Are you ready for me to place you on speakerphone? All right, hold on just a second.
All right, Travis, just to know, let you know, we called to order and we had to vote and it was unanimous. And now, Olivia, if you'll do the roll call, can you hear me okay? Travis?
Lost them already?
I don't know. Travis?
Oh, just restarted.
Okay. I heard him really quiet.
Yeah.
Like a roll call, and then we found out.
You not answering that? He's got disconnected.
Hello. Gerber. I apologize.
All right, Travis, are you with us now?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay. Just to let you know, we called to order and we had to vote. It was unanimous to allow you to telephonically attend, and now we're ready for the roll call. All right.
Mr. Greenwood,
Here.
Mr. Hanson,
Here.
Mr. Earhart,
Here.
Mr. Miskowski,
Here.
Mr. Hodges.
Here. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please stand and join me in a moment of silence followed immediately by our pledge of allegiance to the flag of our country. Thank you. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
after it comes in. That's my motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would also like to make a motion that we include on the agenda discussion pertaining to transferring the fire marshal program back to the state.
Does that need a second?
It would.
Then I would second that.
Okay. The only thing I wish we could wait and see, hear the presentation from the chief, but we've got the motion in the second, so. I'm more inclined to wait until we hear the presentation dealing with this from the chief, and that's my opinion. Is there any other discussion dealing with that?
Mr. Chairman, I would only support adding any type of vote on the fire marshal question until staff is ready to present us with some type of report with options there. Otherwise, we really don't have, I think, good information on which to act. So I would support adding that in as an item for action. Thank you.
Well, can I ask, Paul, will the staff be covering that issue in their presentation?
That is my understanding. Until they present it, I don't know.
Okay.
I think the same, this is the last minute, it's gonna pull up on us at the last minute, at the last hour. I don't have any information on either one of these items. I'm with you, we can listen to it, but since I don't know what's going on, nothing's been presented to us, I don't think we have enough information to actually vote on anything either, but I'll listen to something if they want to bring something up for discussion.
Mr. Greenwood, for your information, by email, September 9th, I sent an email to the chairman requesting that he poll the members consistent with our bylaws and determine whether there was consensus to add this item. He did not do that. Therefore, I'm bringing it up under Robert's Rule of Order as an amendment to the agenda as a way to decide whether the board members are interested in having this on the agenda or not, since the chairman chose not to poll the other board members
I
and
just
determine whether
did.
there was consensus.
There is no time limit on that, Mr. Earhart, and I can do it tonight, and it still falls within the guidelines of reading. There is no
On the
time.
parliamentary inquiry, can the chair debate?
Absolutely. You've got 5 members. I don't know how his district can do without representation.
Well, the same thing pertaining to an item for an agenda. The chairman does not get to make the sole decision on what items are determined on the agenda. Our board procedures specify that we should receive consensus on them and not make the decision based on one person's opinion.
We're doing that now.
Correct.
It does not say it has to be in before the meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I can read it. I mean, it just says,
I was just explaining to Mr. Greenman the background, why it's last minute. It wasn't last minute, it was proposed 2 weeks ago.
Okay, well, that's why, but still, that doesn't need to be
It
brought
would
in a
still,
meeting.
I'm not gonna sit here and debate, but it would give no more information than what he just said.
Right.
Until we hear a report. But anyway, did you have more, counsel?
yes,
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Olivia?
Mr. Hanson?
Aye.
Mr. Earhart?
Aye.
Mr. Miskowski?
Nay.
Mr. Greenwood?
Nay.
Mr. Hodges?
Nay. Any further?
So, then I would
We
make
need
a
to
motion.
adopt an agenda, Mr. Chairman. So
Yes.
I'll move that we adopt the agenda with that first addition, presentation from Ms. Pearson, but not with that additional actual action item that has been proposed previously. So I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay. Any further? Olivia?
Mr. Earhart?
Yes, aye.
Mr. Miskowski?
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood?
Aye.
Mr. Hanson?
Aye.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye. The agenda is passed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now is our public comment period. Person has one opportunity of 3 minutes per individual or 5 minutes per group on non-public hearing matters. If you would come forward and state your name and your district, please.
Chairman, members of the board, my name is Don Wagner, and I live in the 5th District. Gentlemen, I've been coming to these board meetings for 15 years. I've hardly missed any. The board, the planning commission, and BZA. What we witnessed last month was the worst conduct I have ever seen by any members of this board. Mr. Chairman, you and the other two members of the board have the ability to stop that. And I would ask that you do. These people, when they act in this manner, need to be called down, they need to be fined if it's allowable, and whatever else other measures can be taken. Things like what just occurred come up every meeting. We've got some late request that the board has got to deal with. That's totally unnecessary. The bylaws say when those requests are being in, and he has not followed those bylaws. It's just a travesty. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, there's a resident coming for a public comment, but she's gonna be here like any minute.
Is it the lady about the dog park?
Yes, sir.
How'd you do it?
I got
I'm
tried,
joking, I'm
I
joking.
asked you all to call me about it today, but once again,
I saw it on Facebook.
Did you like it?
we have to move on.
Yeah, I don't think you can
Yep.
wait around any longer,
We have to be consistent.
but
So you can submit written comments and bring it up next meeting.
all right. Next is the consent agenda. Jenny Chin.
I'm collecting.
I thought it did, I'm sorry. Not seeing anyone else come forward, I close the public comment. Thank you, Mr. Franklin. And now we're up to the consent agenda. Do we have any changes, corrections, modifications?
I make a motion we adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
No further, Olivia?
Mr. Miskowski?
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood?
Aye.
Mr. Hanson?
Aye.
Mr. Earhart?
Aye.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye. There are no presentations. The next item we have up is 9A, old business, update on fire and emergency medical services program, Battalion Chief Laura Langley, Indiana County Fire, and the EMS department. And she will be joined by Sheriff Jeff Ward, Indiana Sheriff's Office.
Good evening. The sheriff and I are here together tonight, and I'm going to let the sheriff take the lead on this to address some of the concerns that were brought into the recent Headwater Review article about response times.
Good evening. Just wanted to take the opportunity to clarify some of the facts that were in the Tidewater Review. We agree with the facts because that is the data we presented, but I think we need to explain a little bit further than just the raw data that was given so you have a better understanding of what we're talking about. One of the things that was mentioned to the reporters when they were asking for this information was that we went through a data conversion in the middle of that. They asked 5 years of data back. Last year, we converted over to a new system, a new CAD system, and we had a conversion of data that transferred over. Unfortunately, some of the data did not get captured and did not transfer. Some of that, as I look through the information, I can understand where the issue with response times came about, because there are some that are blank, that shows no arrival time at all. Now, some of that is because of conversion. Some of that is that when I'm going to give you an example, a call comes in for a fire at a residence. Dispatch puts out for 2 stations, maybe 3 stations to respond. They take multiple trucks from each station. The first arriving unit on scene gets there, and determines that it's just a trash can that was smoking in the backyard. We don't need any additional units to respond to the scene, so therefore they're canceled. So there are no on-scene times for those units. At data, when you look at the raw data, it shows all those units responding, that's en route time, but there's no on-scene time, they're just en route and then clear from the call. So therefore, you have an open on-scene time, and it's not going to be captured because no units are ever arriving on scene. So that's some of the issues that were there. The article mentions radio reception in some areas. Yes, we do have poor radio reception, and then we've talked about this in our greater Aylet area. There are some areas that we have very poor radio reception. So if the unit marked on scene, dispatch may not have heard them. There have been occasions where we have multiple units responding and marked on scene. They get lost in the transmission and may not be marked up. So I think it's a disservice to both our former fire chiefs and our current fire chiefs to rely heavily on the fact that the on-scene time is so skewed, because I think the data at this point would need to be scrutinized a little bit more. If we look at just 1 year, we may be able to help you a little bit.
Okay. A quick clarification on that point. Isn't that one of the issues that we're going to be discussing in the near future, Mr. Chairman, about the radio areas in Aylet? And the board has recognized that, and the idea that we have some, I just want to make sure that was the point.
They're still looking for one.
Well, but that was inserted in the discussion. Now, I apologize for interrupting you.
No, you're fine, Stanton, and I appreciate that. I didn't mention that to throw that out there either. I wasn't trying to put a plug in. I was just putting what was told in the article about some of the issues there. All these are true. Again, I think if you look at the total picture rather than just zero in on the on-scene times, I think we find that maybe it wasn't as bad as we thought it was, or the numbers look like it because of the units that were canceled or weren't marked on scene. But the primary responding units were marked on scene. So the response time is from the time that call is dispatched to that first arriving unit. And if you looked at that, you would probably see a lot better in time. Again, like I said, it does a disservice to both our former and current chiefs to say that our response time was that off. Now, there are times that the response times are quite lengthy, and that is because of where the location of the call is, or just because maybe we have one unit that's out on another call, and we have to call in another station from West Point maybe to come up to Central Raw to answer call. Obviously, that's going to be 25-minute response time for them. So, just throwing that out to clarify, so that if you had any questions, there's your opportunity.
On the conversion, what is that generally, about 10% error?
I really don't know, so it's probably there's some degree of error.
It always is every time, data. Anything else? With the sheriff, I think you have one, correct?
I just wanted to touch base on exactly, it documented us as not calculating or paying attention to response times, and that's absolutely not true at all. We are doing it differently than it was done 3 months ago. We are looking at other angles besides just the blanketed response time for the very reason that the sheriff said. The response time out of Company 1 changes dramatically depending on where the call is. And for us to put out there that we are going to make it into your house in an average of 7.5 minutes does a huge injustice to our public. When you call 911, you're already upset, a loved one is hurt, and that 8-minute mark hits and we're not there, it's, again, making that person more upset. So depending on where we have to go in the county depends on our response time. Part of the model that we're working on that will be presented to you in January that has a full data will be able to tell us our response time to certain areas that are more outsourced out of the company district and what it takes to get. There's the Mount Olive Cohoe area, we're not getting there in under 14 minutes. And unfortunately, we really have to take these things into consideration because if we only have one unit in the county and that unit drives erratically or does not make it to the call, we now have a person who needs 911. I have an ambulance that needs 911 because we have wrecked, and it starts just a whole downward slide. So we are absolutely tracking response times, and that was where we were misquoted. We also are tracking other things, such as how many times we are going without units and UA in a month. And this past month, we went 6 times NUA 2 of those times that we went NUA, we have reached out to sister communities, and both of them were NUA at the time. That was Hanover and Caroline County. So this is something that is going on all the way around. We are tracking how many times we land helicopters each month. In the month of August, we landed 3 helicopters for King William. We assisted Walkerton in landing another. That's when a patient is in such a critical point that they don't have the time to make it to the hospital and a ground transport, and we need to get them up in the air and get them to VCU or the appropriate center very quickly. So we are looking at those numbers also. The big number for us is that our members are making it out of Station 1 in the appropriate time, which NFPA states that they should be making it out in 1 minute for medical calls. The good news to this is we're making it out in 1 minute and 15 seconds, which sounds bad. However, from Station 1, you physically cannot respond and mark up on the radio until you hit 360. It's a dead service area for Station 1. So that extra 15 seconds, they're getting out of the house quickly. That extra 15 seconds that we're showing, that's what that is. And again, we're looking at radio communication upgrades and all of that. So we hope in the future that would be a better document. Any other questions?
Questions I would have on this particular article, because I have not read the article. Did your, when this article was produced or be in production, did you or your staff had a chance to look at the article prior to its being published?
No, sir.
For accuracy?
No, sir. And it was a recorded, I did the interview with her from my point. It was recorded. I spent a lot of time explaining to her how we do things. We talked about the 5-year mark and how they're averaging over 5 years. And unfortunately, from the fire and EMS side, that's not a good capture of numbers because 5 years ago, we didn't have paid staff. So as of July of last year, we started our paid staff, and that's where our numbers are going to change dramatically, because we have somebody in there that can answer that first out call.
Another question, if I may. Follow up to that, then, from what you've said, has the Tidewater Review or the people who produced this, have they offered the opportunity to do a response letter from the department, or to say that here's some issues that may have been in question, but we'd like to have here's our clarification as to what was published, because we'd like to have my perception, because we'd like to have the public have a clear understanding of what's going on with the department, rather than a misunderstanding from a major publication in a news publication in our area.
Absolutely, and I feel the exact same way. I have talked about it with the county administrator. We are often misquoted in there. Titles are put in inappropriately. I had to immediately address that she's, my title is the fire chief, I'm not fire chief. We find many errors in the reporting, and the county administrator and I have discussed that, and we are looking at options, because that's the biggest problem. It will start a mass hysteria with our citizens if they don't know what's coming, but on the flip side, it's also a mass hysteria if I look at you and say that you live 3 miles out of West Point, I'm going to get there in 7 minutes. So I think the education of the public on the appropriate and how response times is where we really need to hit home. And I'm hoping that in talking to the Tidewater Review, they would like to work with us in covering the appropriate information.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to use this term, let's see, how can I get around using the term fake news? I don't want to use that term with regards to Tidewater Review, but that's my concern, is that, just as you have suggested, Chief, that there may be some considerations amongst the public and citizens that we serve, that you serve, that we all serve, as to exactly what's really going on, and without, not what's really going on. What is the perspective of what's going on, and is there a follow-up, some way that we can follow up and say, there might have been a misunderstanding, so let's do it, what do editors do?
They send a retraction.
A retraction, yes.
Or say, here's some additional information for clarification. Is there have they made it? Is that possible? Can that be done, or will it be done?
I know that the county administrator and I have spoke of that, and we have asked to reach out and do that. I would also like to contact the county courier and see if they would maybe like to start covering some of our information too, so that we have, again, used fake news, perfect, unfortunately, way to say it, but we have someone else there who is out there reporting with us, who is within the community and willing to work so that we can get the right educational message out there. So yes, I think between the two of us, we have discussed this several times since the article came out, the sheriff and I, which is why we were up here together tonight. We were very upset about how it was portrayed, and we want to make sure that we are getting the right information out there.
Well, the right information is being given in the right format.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I think, I understand how they would misunderstand some of that, like the sheriff. is trying.
Absolutely.
Is it possible that this is not their expertise, fire and EMS?
It is very possible, sir. And I will say, in Sarah Rose's defense, she spent lots of time with me, sitting down, trying to learn, trying to understand. I have asked her to please do a ride along with us. This is a whole other animal. She has no background in fire and EMS, and so she too is trying to learn. So I feel if that relationship could be nurtured a little bit, it might also help us.
Believe me, I've got 48 in law enforcement, many times I don't understand what y'all talking about.
Vice versa.
Mr. Chairman, is there any way we could get a copy of that for the board's review? Maybe the secretary or the chairman could give us
That report.
right, just so we can go maybe in a future work session and just, like you said, to make a educated retraction to tell us really the facts instead of, like you said.
Right, and I know that the public is going to come to that. That's why you serve here. So any information that we can get out that is the appropriate information, that's what we need to work together to do. And unfortunately, we're going to run into press is press. We're going to run into these things. But together, we can get the right information out there.
Well, my consideration was not so much a retraction, Mr. Greenwood, but rather a clarification.
No,
And I think
same
that's
thing.
what you were pointing
Same.
out to. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, one question. What value or use is the past performance if there's holes in the data?
That was part of what we tried to explain, because the big one for us on the fire EMS side is because we have completely changed our response system in the past year, that data is not doing us any good. So we need to concentrate on the data of what we have, and mainly because prior to a year ago, any response, if there was no one in the firehouse, you have to add anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes for someone to come up to the firehouse to get a piece of apparatus and then go out. So they're apples and oranges, and moving forward, that's exactly what we want to do, is capture the numbers of what's going on. Look at our MUAs, look at how many times we're flying people by helicopter, all of those things so that we can get a better picture of what is going on and what our numbers truly are.
Mr. Chairman, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding, my recollection is that the board in the past with your predecessor, and the chairman included, consistently had issues with the information that we were given from your predecessors, whether it was accurate, response times were accurate, whether it didn't capture am I correct in that?
There were a lot of questions in those reports, and some of it had to do with a couple different reporting techniques.
Yes.
Correct. And we are only using the reporting techniques we are using that are coming to you are out of the computer-aided dispatch system, which is the CAD. And the reason we are going to stick with that, can we as a department looked at IO responding and other of our programs to kind of get a baseline for numbers? Yes, we can. However, those numbers are absolutely useless when we go to apply for grants. They're not allowed to be used, and in several other instances. So for us, the focus, we want to use CAD and go straight from there, because then we're pulling our numbers, and our numbers are consistent with what we're putting in for grants.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Muskowski, do you have any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chairman. I'm disturbed by the fact that we don't have good radio service at the fire station. But I know, again, that's something we're going to be addressing as part of a more comprehensive look at that system. But that caught me off a little bit.
I think that's been that way from day one.
Yes, sir. This is nothing
That's
new.
what I remember about it.
From what I've been told since I have been there, and it is being looked at. I know in the Motorola meeting that I attended this past couple of weeks, that is part of what's being looked at and how to be fixed.
Well, Mr.
That would
Chairman,
seem quite essential. So, all right, well, we'll talk about that when that time comes. But thanks for the report.
Mr. Green.
now that you brought that up, Ms. Nunley, we did have in one of our previous, the agreement that we had with Comcast did specifically state that they were supposed to give service to the fire station. And I know the new company has taken over, they're digging some land, but it just has an area, they haven't got there yet. But would that clause still be in effect? I know we talked about it.
I think he says we give it to them if we ask for it.
Right,
I
if
don't know
we ask for it, because
it.
like I said, they don't even have high-speed internet at that office.
Yeah.
Would they be, if we asked them, would they bring it to the fire station now, since it wasn't one of those
That's in the
agreements?
contract, yeah, I'm pretty sure that.
That
And
would help.
we did look at doing some DSL.
I know, we talked, we had the
and
epoxy, I know.
yeah, it was declined, so
Right.
that's more than just a quick fix,
Right.
unfortunately.
That would not help the radio.
But that does not help the radios, no, sir.
I thought this is where you were going.
I was hoping maybe that it could be incorporated, 'cause like you said, the company is not just, like we said, stated many times, it's not just cable, it's gonna be internet, it might be phones, who knows? Like I said, maybe we could incorporate that in a future session to make that a priority, since, like you said, it is a problem.
We can always ask.
That's right, that's right, you don't get it if you don't ask, right? Thank you.
Right, and
I submitted my report. I know that Supervisor Earhart, you have many questions about the fire marshal's office, so if we want to go ahead and dig into that, we can do that.
Just, you know, feel free to go ahead. I just wanted.
Okay, that's a good way to start. All right, so we have been looking at this since we took over at the end of June. Skip Harsey stepped up and worked with us immediately because the very first thing that we had to worry about was the fireworks stands being inspected and so forth. So we went ahead and he did all of those for us, and then we started on the plan of what needs to be done. I cannot comment on how it was handled prior to our succession coming in, and so what I can tell you is in pulling records on January 31st of 2017, he was sworn in as our assistant fire marshal. So when the past chief was no longer with us, he can pick up and roll in that role. I would like to have him put into the fire marshal position, period. There's a couple reasons why. We actually did some looking into going back to the state. That was one of the things when we first got into the position to see, is this the best way to do it? West Point does use the state. I spoke with John Edwards and I spoke with Chief Bartos on both of those to see what they had and where they were. I also have contacted the state.
Mr. Sykes?
I'm sorry?
Steve Sykes?
Steve Sykes is the head, however, he is not, Dee Madison is our head fire marshal for this area. So in doing so, I learned a lot of good information. The first being that we are, in our area, we are down 6 fire marshals. So we are way behind the 8 ball in getting inspections done. So if we were to transfer this over to the state, we're in line with first come, first serve of all the public buildings that need to be done. Where Mr. Harsey has already stepped up, our schools weren't, the 4 schools were inspected before we got done. The fun farm is under current inspection. Any other daycares or facilities that are in churches, McHenry is a good example. I don't know if McHenry has been inspected. I have put it out there to see if it hasn't, and he is willing to do all these and get them up.
I think there were 5 daycares.
Yes, and some of them-
According to the Department of Social Services website.
Correct, and some
Outside
of
of West
them
Point.
are in West Point, right?
There
But,
were 2 in West Point and 5 in King William.
and some of those don't count the church daycares that need to be done. So those are also a loophole that has been missed in just the paperwork that we need to get up to speed on, and he is willing to do that. The other thing that is very important about Mr. Harsey and why he is such a good fit for us is he is also a fire investigator. So if we have any issues where I need a fire investigation done, if we don't utilize his resources, I then have to go to the state police. The fire we recently had a couple weeks ago, Mr. Harsey was out and could not come in, we knew this, and so I had to go straight to the state police. The closest state police available to come to me was 3.5 hours away to do the investigation. The biggest problem with that is not only is it 3.5 hours, but we cannot leave the scene until they get there. So we already have a tax system with resources, and now I'm keeping fire personnel on scene waiting for a state police officer to come in and do the investigation. Where in the 3 fires we've had fire, plus a fire that and a car fire, Mr. Harsey had them done and was there within the hour. He has requested, it's a completely volunteer based, he is not requesting any money.
Right.
He doesn't want a car, he doesn't want any of that. So it's not costing us anything, which is another great thing. And we sent one of our 6 full-time employees through fire marshal school. So he has the certification, however, it's just a piece of paper. He needs to learn how to do what needs to be done by a fire marshal. If we transfer it back to the state is not gonna come out and
When you
work
say
with
he,
this.
who are you referring to?
Mr. Boyd, one of our firefighters.
I thought you were talking about Skip.
Nope, Mr. Boyd, he now has his fire marshal certification, and Mr. Harsey can work with him to develop him, so when he is ready to move on to retirement and better pastures, we can have Caleb pick up, and we have as a county, have already invested that money in him. So to me, if we go to the state, we're gonna lose. That's an investment that we're gonna lose, because they do not have the time to train one of our people. So those are my points on why we would like to keep it here. I will be the first to tell you that if at any point I don't think it's working, I will step up and let you know, and we transfer it out, because again, we did look at it. The state is not gonna come in and do any of our businesses. They do not have to do that.
Correct.
We can put an ordinance in place that you can do, saying that the state will come in and do the businesses. However, again, that's a lot of business to be done. One of the ways around that works really, really well for both fire personnel and our community is we do what is known as a pre-plan and a courtesy inspection. And that kills two birds with one stone. What it does first off is it allows the same checklist that our fire marshal would use, our members that are on duty that day go through and just note what they see that could be fixed. It also puts our firemen in these businesses to see what is going on and to sketch out the buildings, find out where the hazards are, and do everything we need to do. So if in fact it does catch on fire, we know what is in there, where it's located, and where we can and cannot go. So that is something that we can also offer for free to our community. Questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Well, maybe not so much as a question, but I appreciate this information. There's been a lot of work done. What I was perceiving from my conversation with Skip was that, he was not being valued. He was not being used in his full capacity. He hadn't been asked to do any inspections. He told me that the car that he had for use was taken back from him by the county. He no longer had access to that car. Granted, he's doing this free pro bono kind of thing, and that's a tremendous asset to us. And so, in addition to that, I was concerned in terms of liability. We have all these daycares that weren't documented as ever being inspected, and I would defer to legal counsel, but, I would think that the county has to incur or assume some certain amount of liability in the event that there was a fire or some type of catastrophic event at these daycares, knowing that they had never been inspected under the state law. So that was my emphasis or push, to desire to move this forward. And it sounds like you have made a lot of strides in moving the program forward and getting us back on track. So I appreciate that, and I'm pleased with what I heard.
Good, and we did actually offer Skip a car. He declined it because his truck is set up to do everything it needs to with all his equipment in it, and then he would just end up having to switch back and forth. So we did offer that to him. If there is any type of education that we can help him with down the line or so forth, we are willing to do all of that, because he's doing it volunteer, he's doing it on his own time. If I call him, he answers me right away. One of the other things that we have done throughout this process is there is now a fire marshal at kingwilliamcounty.us. So it is a fire marshal email that can be reached. So if a citizen calls and they have questions or they want something inspected, it can be given to them, they can fill out their information, and then whenever we decide that when Skip decides that he no longer wants to hold this position, it just transfers right into the next person in line. And we don't miss a beat.
Going backwards a little bit and not going back into our past, but we're keeping records now.
Yes, sir. Yes, there are records. I have many of the stuff is here in case anyone wanted to see it tonight in front of me that has been done.
All you have on me.
Yes, sir. And anything I asked Mr. Harsey for, he was able to pull out too. So anything he was involved in, he has records. He has passed on a flash drive to me that has all of that information, and I have built my pretty vanilla folders.
I wanted to bring up something too. Like you said, I don't want to bring up old business or old ruins, but like I said, still we're confused about, I know we did some inspections with the old chief, and just because somebody's hard drive is gone, there are ways to get stuff off hard drives with our IT people. There have to be paper copies, because I know he did some inspection, so we have nothing.
I do not.
I said that Mr. Earhart is assuming that we did nothing. I mean, I know some things were inspected, so that was a farce to begin with. He did do some inspections. I mean, he did start the program. I don't like to dish anybody. He really did a lot for this county, and I don't want to
Absolutely.
say bad about him, but I know he did do some inspections of businesses, daycares, and things like that, just because, and he had to give it to the volunteers he had at that time. None of them remember any of the things that they did, or have
Well, the
documented.
volunteers at that time wouldn't have done any of their inspections. That's something that has to be handled for him because he was the sworn marshal.
And so
So,
he had it on his
in his
laptop.
defense,
There's no way to,
exactly,
Get it.
and everything he did was on that hard drive and it was not
no way to.
backed up.
Because I'm with IT and VDOT, and we had ways you could take the hard drive off and you could put it in, no, nothing, it was
Nope.
gone.
To move further to fix that problem, I am purchasing external hard drives also.
Right.
We have the one that is used by the county, and then we will have the backup of the external hard drive. It is not an expensive thing to do, and it is an easy fix so that we don't run into this again.
Right, plus like you're saying, we have such good internet now, maybe that should be done anyway. Everything on everybody's county computer should be backed up no matter what, so that if something like this should happen again, something from a previous date can be brought forward, at least we haven't lost everything.
Right, absolutely. So,
Okay.
yeah, and I hope that in the future, that's the way, that is definitely where I'm moving. I believe the documentation is, that's the only way we're gonna,
Right, sounds
be
great,
able to
and
combat
I
anything.
appreciate what you've done too, thank you so much. Thank you, Jim.
Anything else? Thank you.
yes, did anyone have any questions on the information that I provided in my report? I know that we usually go through that.
I just thought of something.
Yes, sir.
2 firefighters on Joaquin for brush fire. Do you know that?
Not off the top of my head. If you need
Last
information,
2 days, I know, just what's going on, I think is what I was.
the good news is it's nothing horrible because I would know about it. It would be because I get contacts from dispatch right away, but I do not know what exactly they were, but I can look into them and get back to you. And I know that Supervisor Earhart, you also are asking for a ride-along, which I'm super excited about. Again, I ask all of you, please come do this. And you wanted the ride-along documentation. Your ride-along is scheduled for October 10th. When I pulled the ride-along documentation out that we currently have, I realized that it did not address some of the issues that need to be addressed, such as the HIPAA laws that are now in place and so forth. So I am working on updating it, and it will be ready for
You
you.
mean the form itself, is that what you're?
Yeah,
calling
the form itself,
Okay.
yeah, it didn't address any of that, and because of the new, although they're not new, but they were not put into the ride-along form.
Is this specific only to your department, or is it also the sheriff's department? Because when I asked before about riding along with the sheriff's department, is it the same form, or, okay?
No.
Well, that would have made it easy if it was one form for both departments, but.
Well, and we have different liabilities that we have to take care of because
Okay.
of what we're doing. If you are riding along with us, you will follow it all the way through to the hospital. And with the sheriff's department, you can often go to another deputy or so forth. So we have different liabilities, and because of the HIPAA laws with the medical part, that's a big part of it.
Okay.
So yes, you will have that once it is 100% updated and brought up to code.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, next item I have is 9B, Ms. Pearson, Commissioner of Revenue, come forward. And Mr. Earhart has some questions dealing with B-pole, and I don't really remember all the details.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for having me tonight. I don't really have anything prepared as such. I had sort of short notice, but I do have a little bit of information about the B-poll tax, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. We've been doing pretty well with the B-poll tax this year, despite I've had my employee the deputy who runs the business license program has been out since January. We hired a new deputy to take over that program in August, and she's catching on really fast and doing well with it and getting us up to date. But we've still surpassed our projections for B-poll, and a lot of it is because there's a lot going on in the county, a lot of new businesses, a lot of construction, and we get revenue off of that as well. The B-poll tax is covered in the King William County Code in Chapter 18. It's really the only tax that we administer that's not in Chapter 70 of the King William County Code. And from my memory, that when we adopted the B poll tax in August of 2002 for King William County, we sort of based our code off of the code that was intact in Matthews County at that time. So that's kind of where we started from with the code. Article 11 outlines business, professional, and occupational taxes for King William County. And it's a license tax based on the gross receipts, not the net receipts, but the gross receipts. And for all types of businesses up to $50,000 in gross receipts, they just pay a flat fee of $30. Once they go over the $50,000, contractors pay 16 cents per $100 of gross receipts. Financial service companies pay 38 cents per 100. RE services, real estate brokers, agents, they pay 38 cents per 100. Repair business and other types of business, that's where we have a lot of in-home type of businesses. They pay 16 cents per $100 of gross receipts. Professional services, such as like attorneys, doctors, they pay 38 cents per $100 of gross receipts. And retails pays 20 cents per 100. That would be like your food line or any type of store that's selling goods. And restaurants as well. They pay 20 cents and then they pay the meals tax as well. Like the Verizon telegraph services, they pay 0.5%. Water, heat, and light and power, they pay 0.5%. Wholesalers pay 5 cents per 100. And peddlers, they pay a flat fee of $500 or $250 for perishable goods.
So does that mean someone that comes in and sets up something?
What's a peddler?
Yeah.
Oh, a peddler? Yes, like, I don't know, y'all might remember this summer we had a man who came up to Central Garage and he was selling rugs. And
That's
he
not a
came,
perishable item.
no, he had to pay $500.
So it's a non-perishable item.
Non-perishable goods, they can get a license, a peddler license for $250. I mean, for perishable goods. So,
Does it have to be mobile or can it be, is it fixed?
a peddler is mobile.
Okay.
They're not in a fixed place of business. And the $250 for perishable goods was established, I don't remember what year, but it was Blue's ice cream truck that went around and sold ice cream and different things. I think he's the one who came to the board and requested that.
So like turbos is considered perishable?
Turbos is a perishable peddler.
But something like Tommy's, the produce stand, is not? Is
No,
that retail? What is that?
that's
considered?
retail. Yes. And they would only pay, because they have farm goods that they sell that they grow themselves, and they don't pay a business license on that. They pay on the stuff that they buy from the outside and bring it in and sell there.
Okay.
We've had about 650 licenses purchased to date. It is the duty of the Commissioner of the Revenue to require all persons prosecuting any type of business, employment, profession, or activity for which a license is provided to procure such a license and to pay the business license tax. And if there are any license taxes that are not paid, it is my duty to report any and all delinquents to the county attorney for prosecution. So that's kind of the where we go if they don't pay or go pay the tax, keep up to date with it. A business means a course of dealing which requires the time, attention, and labor of the person so engaged for the purpose of earning a livelihood or profit. It implies a continuous and regular course of dealing rather than an irregular or isolated transaction. A person may be engaged in more than one business. The following acts shall create a rebuttal presumption that a person is engaged in a business. Advertising and the filing of tax returns. These are the two that are mentioned in our code. So, and we have the ability to look at tax returns and, you know, check and see if there appears to be a business there. Now, of course, with Facebook and newspapers, we started out just like looking at newspapers and finding advertisements there. Now, there's a whole lot more avenues. And whenever anyone comes in and says, hey, mentions a business, we try to check that out and make sure that they're on our rolls as having a business. So there's a number of ways that we find out about them. We get reports from the Department of Taxation that we go through those, and we have different avenues. And then, so every year at the beginning of the year, all of our active businesses, we mail them an application. And they can, once they have established a business license and met all the requirements, they can renew their license online if they so choose. But they're still subject to audit if, you know, something doesn't seem right. Did you have any more questions?
I already asked, so I didn't know if anybody else wanted to defer.
I just have a question, you may not know this, because I said you had to, you're throwing this at the last minute, but do you have of the percentage of the 650 total licenses? Do you know how many may be above the 50,000 threshold? I'm sure a lot of these companies don't even
Oh,
make
yeah.
the gross, so.
It's a large percentage, and,
Right,
and
and everybody thinks B-pole is such a waste, but like I said, most of them, I wanted to tell the public, are under 50,000, so they only pay $30. It's
Right.
not like it's a huge misservice, which everybody seems to
No.
think you want to use it as some platform.
yeah. And we get calls almost daily from people that are trying to get their financing and information from the bank, and they have to prove that they
How
have
much they make.
a license, that they're recognized by the county in order to get financing for their businesses. So in a lot of ways, it's kind of a service to the business community, because a lot of them are requesting. I mean, we get daily requests. And our new deputy who's dealing with business license, she has banking background, so she's very familiar with all the things that the banks are asking. And a lot of times we have to reproduce copies of their license and things like that.
So down to the chase, obviously, my understanding is all the BPO goes to schools, but what is the current amount of money that you have on record for the last accountable amount for BPO?
Okay, it was, close to it's probably 460 now.
Pardon me?
It's probably 460,000.
450?
460,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I might, so when we met earlier this year with respect to the county administrator and moving ahead as far as board performance, that kind of thing, one of the things that we had asked was in terms of working with the commissioner to identify any deficiencies or loopholes and that type of thing moving forward. So can you give us any update on anything that might have changed since the beginning of the year, as far as, are we capturing more businesses that, you know, places that may not have applied in the past? Are we still kind of business as usual, so to speak?
Well, we're over 100,000 past what we had projected
100,000
in revenue,
dollars? Okay.
tax dollars. We're over 100,000 in tax dollars more than was projected for BPOL. And we've kind of always projected based on past years, so it does seem like we're moving ahead with the program, despite, you know, we've had to deal with less people. We didn't have our business deputy for most of this year, but we've been able to keep it going. So, which tells me that I think there are more businesses. I don't think it's we haven't done any new procedures. We've just tried to keep it intact while we didn't have the staff to focus solely on the program. So that's what that tells me. Now that we have a new deputy we're training, you know, I want to do a lot more.
There's definitely been an increase, correct? 'Cause
Oh, yeah.
I thought I remember 300,000 in that ballpark being the income from VPO.
So that's what I'm wondering, are more people just saying I need a license, or are we doing some type of more detailed review or enforcement of the code, or is it just
What accounts for
coincidental?
the additional money?
Well, like I said, I think it's more businesses. We've had a lot of construction, and of course, we get a business license tax from that construction. Because our deputy has been out, you know, all of us have been focusing on the program as much as we can, but we still have our other duties that we have to keep up with. So, and we're trying to train Miranda, our new deputy, you know, and to really scour this program, and we want to do as much with technology as we can.
It seems like more folks are coming through the circuit court to get the name.
Mhm.
And the latest one I remember is the mobile pet grooming.
Yes. Well, they're going to be, circuit court won't be doing it anymore as of January 1, the fictitious names. They'll be doing that at the SCC from now on, or from then on,
Online.
I guess. Yeah, and it'll probably cost more, of course.
State signing, you know what about.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Anything else?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Right, the next item we have is designating the board member voted at the VACO conference, resolution 19-53, Bobby.
Gentlemen, what you have in front of you is Resolution 1953. The Virginia Association of Counties Annual Conference is going to be held the second week of November, and this resolution is asking you all to determine who will be the voting representatives of the county.
Mr. Chairman, if I might ask a question, is Travis going to be able to go? Will he be able to?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I plan to be ambulatory by then.
I didn't want to recommend him if he wasn't going to go, so.
I believe that there's only two supervisors that are guaranteed that they're going to be here to attend this on the board. So it'd be either Travis or the chairman. And Mr. Chairman, as much as I appreciate your assistance, Travis has done this for many years. If you would not mind, I would second his nomination.
Okay.
So. Travis, are you willing to do that again? I would assume so.
Typically, you don't show up for a meeting and you can volunteer to do things, so that's okay.
We could have put you on mute. Okay.
Well, I'm happy to do it, thank you.
All right. Olivia?
Mr. Greenwood?
Aye.
Mr. Hanson?
Aye.
Mr. Earhart?
Aye.
Mr. Miskowski?
Aye.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye. And just so everybody knows, the attendees are Hodges, Hanson, Moskowski. Are you an alternate, Mr. Earl?
No. I would have gone there. Travis was not going to be able to attend, but I'm good.
Are you going to knock him when he's down? All right, the next item I have is 10B, review and instructions to staff concerning Ricker Anderson report plan.
Gentlemen, what you have in front of you is a memo. We were notified September 5th, 2019 of a notice of tort claim against King William County and King William Public Schools by Ricker Anderson, attorneys at law, for an incident that occurred at the high school stadium on September 7th, 2018, where an individual was injured. I spoke with Mr. Nick Roberts, our county administrator, about this. His comment was that the claim is barred by someone.
County attorney.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I don't want you to go.
Everybody else. Not you.
He stated that the claim is barred by sovereign immunity as the actual actual property belongs to the public schools and not to the county. What I am asking is that the board review this and agree with the denial of the claim and direct me to formally notify the attorneys at Ricker Anderson that we are denying the claim.
Just for clarification, Mr. Chairman, your position on this? Asking the county attorney.
Oh, I agree. It's barred by sovereign immunity as a tort claim. Counties are absolutely immune from sovereign immunity. And it's not even your property anyway, it's the school's.
So do we need a formal motion to?
Motion to deny the claim would be appropriate.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we deny the claim.
Second.
Larry?
Mr. Hanson?
Aye.
Mr. Earhart?
Aye.
Mr. Miskowski?
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood?
Aye.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye. And the next item I have, I'd like to introduce our county attorney, Mr. Andrew McRoberts.
Hello. Nice to be here.
5 minutes or less.
Speak.
5 minutes or less. How about I'll sit down and I'll say thank you very much.
Right. And let's see.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, as a follow-up to this, oh, never mind, I withdraw that, there's no need for clarification, I understand, thank you.
Okay. And now let's see, Board of Supervisors comments, and I'm showing Mr. Miskowski to lead off.
All right, well, thanks everyone for attending from the download. It's a pretty good crowd, so thanks for coming out tonight. Sorry I couldn't be there with you. Heard I had a pretty bad fall here at home a couple weeks ago, and had surgery done on my left knee, so recuperating from that. A lot of you have reached out to check on me, some come by, and that's very much appreciated. So thanks everyone for that. Enjoy your evening, and I hope to be there in the flesh at the next meeting. So thanks a lot.
Yes, I thank everybody for coming. It is a big crowd, looks like, back to our normal stands. Thanks everybody for coming. Sorry we didn't have more meeting, our work session this past month. We really didn't have a lot of stuff to talk about, so it's good. And just keep coming. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hanson.
Well, just quickly, as we've said many times in the past, believe it or not, I think it's really good that we have a core group of people who continue to look at these meetings as being important enough to give up part of your evenings to be with us and to help give us guidance during the rest of the month. Thank you so very much for continuing to come, and for those who are able to find the time part-time to come, thank you so very much for coming as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Earhart.
I have several items here. Unfortunately, is it pronounced Tukey? Tukey. Unfortunately, Ms. Tukey was not able to speak this evening. I would encourage you to follow up with some form of email or correspondence on your issue that you would like, and hopefully you can be here to speak in person next time. Also, I'm very impressed with Ms. Nunley's performance. I assume it's in conjunction with her and Rick, but I was very impressed with the presentation tonight, and I want to thank her again for that effort that they put in. Mission essential functions. Mr. Greenwood made reference to IT and VDOT. Computer backup and mission essential function is, and I know we've got some computer people in here that sit on the quick committee and whatnot, but mission essential functions that relate to computers are vital for government. And when you have a failure, especially dealing with a mission essential function related to law enforcement, public safety, that kind of thing, it's just not a good thing. And I'm sorry that I perhaps overreacted last time, but this is a critical area in terms of backup and computer resources. Whether it's a hard copy, whether it's a flash drive, we need to have that in place to document and prevent that kind of thing from happening. So hopefully that will be done. And if I was overly passionate about that, please accept my apologies, Ms. Passionary. Lastly, with respect to the board agenda, you need to read the procedures, okay? September 9th, I submitted my request. That was 11 days. The board's supposed to have the things in 10 days before we act. And there was no action, there was no attempt to reach consensus, so it was well in advance of the deadline established by the board. Thank you.
And it was handled tonight, as you saw. Also, one thing in dealing with the conduct, one of the speakers mentioned, there is no fine, there is no punishment for any conduct of the board member. November 5th, that's the only time you can voice your opinion. I appreciate all of you coming, and have a safe trip home. Would you just keep, if any of you knew, Mr. Dean Greer passed away, 85 years old. He was well known in the West Point area. He was a logger, he was a bluegrass singer, he owned a record company, and a whole lot of other things. But he
Jack of all
passed away.
trades?
Huh?
Jack of all trades, man.
Yes, he had it all. And I thank you all, and do I have a motion?
Make a motion for adjournment. Beat you, Travis.
Yes, thanks.
Mr. Earhart?
Aye.
Mr. Miskowski? Mr. Greenwood? Mr. Hanson? Mr. Hodges?
Aye. And Travis, I had found out you must be late in the meeting on Thursday at 8:05.
Action off. Yeah, action off, that's what I was talking about. Action off should have been taken off.
he passed away.
Action off passed away, he was our county attorney's review.
It was, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he passed away. Thank you, Gene. That's what I was talking about. I mean, yeah, I know, yeah. Yeah.